Hey, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis. I'm bringing you a magnificent 7 of kick-ass comps. These are compilation albums put out by both minor and major labels. If you're new to collecting vinyl, buying any of these cool comps is a really quick way to have an instant singles collection. And speaking as a DJ, I used to love comps because they were a real space saver. I used to drag as much vinyl as I could to the clubs to spin. And it was always a relief to bring a few comps with me so that I didn't have to drag all my 45s as well. So please join me this week for Kick-Ass Comps, the return of the Magnificent 7. Before we get started, I just want to ask if you're enjoying the content I'm bringing you, please consider joining my Patreon. It's at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. And thanks. Up first, Mutant Pop. This is a compilation of tracks on the Fast Product label from 1978 through 1979. And it's brilliant. Fast Product was an independent Scottish label, the first label to release material by the Mekons, the Human League, and Gang of Four. How's that for a pedigree? This compilation features one of the Human League's most influential songs, Being Boiled. It only cost £250 to record, and it was backed with the track Circus of Death, which is also included here. The lyrics, which are about being boiled alive, is apparently an angry scree against the silkworm industry. The music to Being Boiled was created on a Roland 100 synth and was massively influential to bands like Depeche Mode and Soft Cell. When Fast Product put out the single, it went over well with the post-punk crowd, but it didn't really do much on the charts. Once the Human League's Don't You Want Me Baby took over the world in 1982, EMI, their major label, re-released Being Boiled. It's the same exact 1978 track, but it's a half a minute longer, and it fades out instead of the sudden ending of the original. This time it reached number 6 on the UK singles chart. Nothing succeeds like success. With killer tracks from the Human League, Gang of Four, and the Mekons, whose track Where Were You is a clinic on punk minimalism. This comp is a must-have. But the real story here are the bands you may not know. 2-3, Scars, and The Flowers, sometimes credited as Flowers. The band 2-3, to my ears, sounds like post-punk meets pub rock. Post-pub, if you will. The band Scars sound like The Fall on acid. But my favorite of the three is the band Flowers, who have the sort of cold, distant, post-punk sound that I love. Check out Confessions by The Flowers to see what this comp is really all about. Up next, Wanna Buy a Bridge. I say unreservedly, this is one of the greatest comps ever released. It's basically a collection of singles released on the Rough Trade label from 1977 to 1980. And with the exception of the Robert Wyatt ballad, At Last I Am Free, which is heartbreakingly beautiful, all of these songs share a ragged, angular, punk aesthetic. One of the things I really love about this comp is just how well it represents the female-fronted contingent of punk, with excellent tracks by the Slits, the Raincoats, Kleenex, Delta 5, Young Marble Giants, and Essential Logic, the band fronted by Laura Logic, the former saxophone player for X-Ray Spex. This comp features one of my all-time favorite songs, Part-Time Punks, by the Television Personalities, a song which takes the piss out of the posers which had already infiltrated the small London punk scene by 1978. Other favorites here include the Swell Maps song, Read About Seymour, written about Sire Records boss Seymour Stein, and Soldier Soldier by Spiz Energy, the band who wrote another favorite of mine, Where's Captain Kirk? Listen, there's no way you can go wrong with a comp that opens with Alternative Ulster by Stiff Little Fingers. If you know the songs on this comp, you'll love having them all in one place. If you don't know these songs yet, get ready to fall in love with at least half of the bands on here. Up next, £1.99, a music sampler of the state of things. This release was put out by the Beggar's Banquet label and compiles several cuts from a diverse batch of bands that the label distributed. Avant-garde acts such as John Cale and Nico, respectively, rub shoulders with no-nonsense artists such as the Ramones and the Cult. But the real vibe of this comp is goth, as evidenced by Icicle Works, who never sounded more gothy, with the track that kicks off this comp, Perambulator. This comp also features the ultimate goth band, Bauhaus, with She's in Parties, Bauhaus vocalist Peter Murphy, who covers magazines The Light Pours Out of Me, and Peter's ex-Bauhaus mates in Love and Rockets, with Haunted When the Minutes Drag. This comp keeps hitting with spirited tracks by the Bolshoi, Gene Loves Jezebel, and The Fall. Though it only cost £1.99 when it was released, it really shouldn't cost that much more than that now. I got it for $5. Though that was about 10 years ago. Whatever it costs you these days, it's money well spent. Up next, Wailing Ultimate, the Homestead Records comp, featuring better-known punk bands such as Naked Raygun, Big Black, and Volcano Suns, as well as lesser-known acts, Phantom Tollbooth, Live Skull, and Antietam. This is a rewarding, varied listen, and one of my favorite indie comps ever. Highlights include Dinosaur Jr. with Repulsion, Squirrel Bait with Sun God, and my beloved Big Dipper, a band featuring ex-members of The Embarrassment, Dump Truck, and Volcano Suns, with a really fun song called You're Not Patsy. Perhaps my favorite song on the album, though, is by Great Plains and called Letter to a Fanzine, which asks the musical question, why do punk rock guys go out with new wave girls? I'll put a link to the song below. It's charming as hell, and sums up the playful vibe of this comp perfectly. Speaking of playful, the Matrix info on the runout groove of side A of this comp reads just like Motown for Whitey, and Motown is spelled M-O-W-T-O-W-N. The runout on side B reads Blasting Variations, big deal. So if you're looking for an independent music comp that just doesn't give a damn, give this kick-ass comp a spin. Up next, the Akron Compilation. This comp, believe it or not put out by Stiff Records, compiles an interesting mix of artists on the Akron, Ohio music scene, proving that the North Ohio town had a lot more unique music in it post-Devo than people realize. Boasting acts such as Jane Eyre and the Belvederes, the Waitresses, and Sniper, this comp constantly surprises. In fact, you'll probably be taken aback with just how good the Rachel Sweet tracks, Truck Stop Queen, and Tourist Boys truly are. Bands The Bizarros and Terraplane both kick ass, but by far my favorite track on this comp is Rubber City Rebels by, wait for it, the Rubber City Rebels. And that's the track from this comp that I'll be linking to below, so check it out. One really fun thing about this album sleeve is that it features a scratch and sniff tire that smells like burning rubber. Rubber. Up next, IRS Greatest Hits, Volumes 2 and 3. Volume 1 was a promo, only available by mail, for $2 with a coupon that was included in Volumes 2 and 3. This is a 2-disc edition. It was also available in a 1-disc edition in some areas such as Amsterdam, New Zealand, Australia, Guam, and it was known either as IRS Greatest Hits or Illegal Greatest Hits. Illegal Records is a subsidiary of IRS Records. The 1-disc version is great, but the 2-disc is the one you want to have. This comp does a really good job of putting high-profile artists and obscure acts on an even playing field. For example, Computer Dayton, which is a really cute song by Patrick D. Martin, is followed by Only a Lad by Oingo Boingo, which leads into You Say You Don't Love Me by the Buzzcocks. Every song on here perfectly segues into the next. This comp has the organic feel of a DJ spinning a set. Standout tracks on this comp include Wait for the Blackout by The Damned, Uranium Rock by The Cramps, and my favorite song on this comp, Action Time Vision by Alternative TV. And that's the song I'll be linking to below, so check that out. Solid deep cuts include Lips by Wazno Nariz, Straighten Out by The Stranglers, and Baby Sign Here With Me by Henry Badowski. Yes, the Henry Badowski who wrote one of my all-time favorite Damned songs, Anti-Pope. Speaking of the Damned, there's a track on here, Ain't That a Shame by Brian James, which seems like a blueprint for the sound of his future band, Lords of the New Church. This is such a fun comp to listen to. For example, the song Jukebox by Payolas sounds like Rancid trying to cover a song by Dexy's Midnight Runners. And I mean that as a compliment. And Jukebox by Payolas is followed by Rebellious Jukebox by The Fall. That's how playful this comp is. Speaking of playful, there are 2 songs by Clark Kent. which was the alter ego of Police drummer Stuart Copeland, who had a surprise hit with the song Don't Care. The first is Office Girls, credited to Clark Kent, and the other is Thrills, credited to Clark Kent. Including the early Police track Fallout, Stuart Copeland appears 3 times on this comp, and all I can say is it's good to be brothers with the president of IRS Records. Incidentally, this album jacket makes me want to cry. It features a little girl breaking all of these beautiful, beautiful IRS records, the ones that we're listening to actually. You can make out the titles. The Police, The Damned, Fashion, all of the bands on here, their records are being smashed by her little hammer. Can you imagine what they'd be worth today? And what's worse, you know they're promo copies. And on the back, they're being swept up unceremoniously. Ugh, brutal. Finally, Bomp Records, Volume 1. Bomp Records started as a very cool magazine talking about the cutting-edge music that was not covered in most rock mags. They later began putting out great music themselves. And this comp is perhaps the most eclectic I've talked about today. Highlights on this comp include Punkorama by Venus and the Razorblades, which was another band created by Runaways' Svengali, Kim Fowley, IRT by Snatch, and Captain Nemo by the Whackers. There is outrageously great power pop on here, from the Flamin' Groovies, 2020, the Poppies, and Shoes. The Flamin' Groovies, by the way, were the very first band to ever be released on Bomp, with their song You Tore Me Down, the B-side of which, called Him or Me, is on this comp. Balancing out all that gorgeous power pop are stellar punk singles from underrated bands The Zeros and DMZ. There are some very important tracks on here. Life of Crime by The Weirdos is one of the seminal punk rock records. This comp also features 2 tracks by Iggy and the Stooges. The first is Gimme Some Skin, and the second is I Got It Right, one of their fiercest tracks. Although the version on here is a rather muffled affair compared to the version on this I Got It Right comp, which was mastered by Capitol and put out by Invasion Records in 1983. But everything else on here sounds great. As an indie scene time capsule that still sounds cutting edge today, this Bomp comp is the audio equivalent of a kick-ass issue of the coolest rock mag around. Thanks for joining me this week on Pop Culture Graveyard. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please do me a favor and click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you next week with a lot more cool stuff.